Right, so we're just going to do the last part of the exercise, and that is to take a look at these. And in the thing, sometimes you want to say, okay, well, what items am I spending? Do I think are pretty cheap, and what items do I think are pretty expensive? And I might want to do that by looking at my total, or I might do it by looking at my cost per item. But here I'm going to take a look at my total, and I'm going to say if something is less than $300, then I'm going to consider that pretty cheap. But if it's more than 300, then I'm going to consider that pretty expensive. So what I'm going to do is I want to insert a formula again, right? So I'm going to go here and you'll notice up here, there's a bunch of tabs, right? And one of them is formulas. And under formulas, there's the auto sum ones, which are the ones we're used to using. And then there are some other ones. And what we want to do is we want to take a look at some of the logical ones. If you click on the logical ones, you'll see there's a whole bunch of things here. Well, we're going to use this if, because what we want to say, if the money in cell F2 is less than 300, print the word cheap, otherwise print the word expensive. So I'm going to click the if, and here it's telling me that it wants to do a test. Okay, so I have to tell it a whole lot of information. Well, first, I want it to do a test, and I wanted to say, okay, let's take a look at this $650. So that's the data in cell 2. And I want to see, okay, is that less than 300? So I need to tell it to check that. So I've got my F2 here, and the less than sign is that pointy one that looks like this, it points left. In order to find that on the keyboard, it's right beside the M, and to get it on the keyboard, you just press Shift and that particular key, and then you're going to say type in the 300. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to go out, it's going to look at this amount, it's going to see, is it less than 300? And if it is, well, what do you want to have happen? Well, these are these things. So if it is less than 300, so if the value is true, you want to say, hey, that is really cheap. But if it's not less than 300, you want to say, oh my gosh, that item is expensive. Um, and so when you're done, you just hit OK, and you'll see now what it's done here is it's just printed the word expensive. So again, I can go click on the square, get the plus sign, drag down, and I can see how I think about all of these items. So I obviously, these are my cheap ones, the exercise books, the sellotape, um, the pencil sharpeners, etc. Again, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to select the row, go home, make sure that it's the same font, 14, make sure that my column's wide enough, okay? And then I think I'm pretty close to done. The last thing I can do is put some formatting in. So I might want to maybe make this cell as well, have the gray background. So I click on the gray. I might want to put a box around this whole thing, right? So I'm going to put a large thick box border by clicking on the border here. And so now I've got a border around the whole thing. Okay. I might want to separate this data out in some ways. So I can grab this data right here and maybe put a right border on it and do the same thing for, actually, let's just go to here, a right border. I'm going to remove the border from here. I'm going to just remove it. No border. Here, I'm going to do a right border. My tax column, I'm going to do a right border, my tax as well. A total, and then whether it is expensive or not. And then just going across the bottom here, I might want to just do a bottom border. So I'm kind of separating out the data from some of the other stuff that I worked on. I noticed that these words aren't showing up, so I'm going to go between E and F. I'm going to make them a bit wider. Also notice that I don't have that thick bottom border there, so I'm going to put that on. And so now I have these one, and I can choose to do with that what I want. So I might just put a left there so that I can, but it's completely up to you. So you kind of want to set out your table so that you can see like separation, maybe different colors, other kinds of things that you can do with it. And that's that. So there's a whole lot of other functions. Like I said, min, max, and average. There's this if, which allows you to check to see if there's a condition that you want to meet to write information beside it. But that's all we're going to do on this one for today. And so please check back for video number 3. And video number 3 is just going to take you into how you can set up Excel task number 4, because that one's actually going to be fairly tricky in that we're going to be using different sheets. Thank you.